The ambulance lights were already flashing when I stepped outside. Red and blue reflections bounced off the quiet suburban homes like something out of a nightmare that didn't belong here. Because nothing like this ever happened here. This was the kind of neighborhood where people complained about lawn height, not life-or-death emergencies. For a split second, I thought the ambulance was for someone else. It had to be, because it couldn't possibly be for my house. "Sir, we need access." The paramedic's voice snapped me back to reality. I turned toward the gate, and that's when it hit me. They were here for us. My father. I shouted, running down the driveway. "I'm here. I'll open it." My heart was racing so hard I could barely breathe. Inside the house, my father was on the living room floor, barely conscious, his breathing shallow, his skin turning that pale, terrifying color you never forget once you've seen it. I had called 911 less than 2 minutes ago. 2 minutes. And already, it felt like forever. Our neighborhood had a gated entrance. One of those secure communities that people brag about. Keypad entry, remote access, a barrier arm that could be lifted with the press of a button. Simple, efficient, safe, or at least, that's what it was supposed to be. I reached the control panel. Stop. The word cut through the air like a knife. Sharp, commanding, cold. I froze, slowly turned, and there she was, Linda Harper, HOA president, standing next to the control box like she had been waiting for this exact moment. Clipboard tucked under one arm, phone already in her hand, perfectly styled hair, perfectly calm expression, like none of this was unusual. Like an ambulance waiting outside someone's house was just another Tuesday morning inconvenience. "You are not opening that gate," she said. For a second, my brain didn't process it, because there's no way someone just said that. "Not now. Not when. What are you talking about?" I said, my voice shaking. Behind me, one of the paramedics stepped forward. We have a medical emergency. We need immediate access to this property." She didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on me. "Your account is delinquent," she said, flipping a page on her clipboard. $950 in unpaid HOA dues. Access privileges are suspended. I stared at her, trying to connect the words she just said with reality, because they didn't belong in the same sentence. "My father's dying," I said. "Then you should have handled your obligation sooner," she replied flatly. That was a moment something inside me shifted. Not just anger, not just panic, something deeper, something colder. "I never got any notice," I said, stepping closer. "No email, no letter, nothing." "That's not my responsibility," she said without hesitation. Behind me, "Sir," the paramedic shouted, "we need to get in now." I turned back toward the gate, then back to her. "This is an ambulance," I said slowly. "Not a delivery truck. Not a guest. This is emergency medical services." "Emergency services are still subject to HOA access policies," she said. I blinked. "You can't be serious." "Rules are rules." The words hung in the air. Heavy, unreal, open. "The gate." I shouted. For a moment, everything went quiet. Even the sirens seemed distant. Then, instead of opening it, she lifted her phone. "I'm recording this," she said calmly. "You're becoming aggressive." I couldn't believe it. Not the words, not the tone, not the timing. "Sir," the paramedic yelled again, "we are going to force entry if this isn't opened immediately." Finally, Linda let out a long, exaggerated sigh, like she was the one being inconvenienced. "Fine," she said, stepping toward the control panel. Relief hit me like a wave. My shoulders dropped. My chest loosened. This was over. She was going to open it. Then she stopped, turned back toward me. "You can open it," she said, "after you settle the balance." I stared at her. "You're not serious." "I'm completely serious." Behind me, one of the paramedics didn't wait anymore. He ran to the side of the gate, scanning for manual release. The other rushed back to the ambulance to grab equipment. "Hey!" Linda snapped. "You cannot damage HOA property." They ignored her. Metal clanged. The barrier arm rattled. "So, One paramedic said to me quickly, "Go back inside. We'll handle this." I hesitated for just half a second. Then I ran. Inside the house, everything felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. My father was still on the floor, eyes half open, chest barely moving. "Dad, stay with me," I said, dropping beside him. My hands were shaking as I checked his pulse. Weak, too weak. From outside, I heard the sound of metal snapping. Then footsteps. Fast, urgent. The paramedics burst through the front door seconds later. Equipment in hand. Focused. Locked in. "What do we have?" one asked. "He collapsed. He couldn't breathe," I stammered. They were already working. Checking vitals. Setting up oxygen. Calling out numbers and instructions. I stepped back. Helpless. Watching. One of them looked at me briefly. "You called just in time," he said. Just in time. The words hit me hard, because for a moment, we almost weren't. Outside, I could still hear her voice, arguing, complaining, talking about violations and property damage. And standing there in my own living room, watching my father fight to breathe, I realized something. This wasn't just about $950. This wasn't about misuse. This was about control, power, and someone who thought rules mattered more than human life. I walked to the doorway, looked outside. Linda Harper was still there, still holding her clipboard, still talking, like nothing had happened. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to fight that bill. I was going to tear down everything she thought she controlled. Because what she did today, that wasn't enforcement. That was something else entirely. The ambulance ride felt like it lasted forever, even though, later, they told me it was less than 8 minutes. 8 minutes between my father lying on the floor and being rushed through the emergency doors. 8 minutes that could have been shorter, should have been shorter. I sat in the waiting room, staring at my hands. They were still shaking. I hadn't even noticed until I tried to hold a cup of water and nearly dropped it. Family of Robert Reed. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly across the floor. "That's me." The doctor approached, calm but serious. The kind of expression you try to read, even though you're not ready for either answer. "He's stable for now," she said. The words hit like oxygen. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. "What happened?" I asked. "He suffered a cardiac episode," she explained. "You got him here in time, but it was close. Delays in treatment could have made this significantly worse." Delays. The word echoed in my head. I nodded slowly. "Thank you," I said, my voice tight. She gave a small, understanding nod and walked away. I sat back down, but I couldn't relax, because now that the immediate fear was fading, something else was taking its place. Anger, not the loud kind, not yet, the quiet kind, the kind that builds, because I kept replaying it in my head. The gate, the flashing lights, the paramedics asking for access, and her standing there, calm, blocking them. Over $950. A debt I didn't even recognize. Marcus. I looked up. A police officer stood near the entrance to the waiting area. Mid-40s. Professional. Observant. "That's me." "I'm Officer Daniels," he said. "I'd like to ask you a few questions about what happened at your residence." Of course. Someone must have called it in. Or maybe the paramedics reported it. Either way, good. "Yeah," I said, standing up. "I've got a lot to say." We moved to a quieter corner. He pulled out a small notebook. "Start from the beginning," he said. So I did. I told him everything. The 911 call, the ambulance arriving, the gate, Linda, the clipboard, the unpaid dues, her refusing to open access, recording me, arguing while my father was inside struggling to breathe. I didn't leave anything out. As I spoke, I watched his expression. At first, neutral, professional. Then slowly, it changed. His jaw tightened slightly. His pen paused once. Then again, "Just to be clear," he said finally, "she intentionally delayed emergency medical personnel from entering the property." "Yes," I said, "over HOA dues." He let out a slow breath. That's concerning. Concerning. I repeated. He looked at me, carefully. In situations involving emergency services, he said, any obstruction can become a serious legal issue. Good, because that's exactly what it felt like. I never got any notice about those Jews. I added. No letters, no emails, nothing. He nodded. We'll need to verify that. Do you have any documentation from the HOA? I shook my head. Nothing recent. Last thing I remember was paying everything up months ago. He wrote that down. All right, he said. Here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to file an incident report. We'll also be speaking with the paramedics who responded. Are you going to talk to her? I asked. He met my eyes. Yes. Something about the way he said it told me this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. A few minutes later, another person joined us. One of the paramedics from earlier, still in uniform, still carrying that same urgency, even though the immediate crisis was over. Hey, he said to me, your dad's a fighter. I nodded. Thank you for everything. He gave a small nod, then turned to the officer. You wanted a statement. Officer Daniels flipped to a new page. Yes. Walk me through what happened at the gate. The paramedic didn't hesitate. We arrived on scene. He said, gate was closed. Patient son attempted to open it. Female individual, later identified as HOA representative, blocked access. Blocked how? The officer asked. Verbally and physically, he replied. Refused to open gate. Cited unpaid dues. Delayed entry. The officer wrote that down. How long was the delay? He asked. The paramedic thought for a moment. Roughly 2 to 3 minutes before we initiated forced entry. 2 to 3 minutes. It doesn't sound like much. Until it is. During that time, the paramedic continued, we advised immediate access was required due to medical emergency. And her response? The paramedic's expression hardened slightly. She said, rules are rules. The waiting room felt colder. Officer Daniels looked up slowly. Did she at any point attempt to assist in granting access? No, the paramedic said. She actively prevented it. That was it. Clear. Direct. No room for interpretation. The officer closed his notebook. Thank you, he said. The paramedic nodded and left. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then, this is serious, Officer Daniels said. I know, I replied. No, he said, shaking his head slightly. You don't understand. Interfering with emergency medical response, especially when it results in potential harm that can carry significant consequences. Good, because it should. What kind of consequences? I asked. He hesitated for a fraction of a second. That depends on intent, evidence, and what we uncover about the HOA's actions leading up to this. Leading up to this, meaning this wasn't just about the gate. This was about the bill. The notices I never received. The authority she claimed to have. I want everything checked, I said. That debt, I don't think it's real. He nodded slowly. We'll look into it. And for the first time since this started, I felt something shift. Not relief. Not yet, but direction. Because this wasn't just an incident anymore. This was an investigation. And Linda Harper, she had just crossed a line that couldn't be explained away with a clipboard and a rulebook. As the officer walked away, I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes for a second. The image came back instantly. The gate, the flashing lights, her voice. Rules are rules. I opened my eyes. No, I muttered quietly. Not this time. I hadn't slept. Not really. Just lay there on the stiff hospital chair, staring at the ceiling while machines beeped steadily beside my father's bed. Each sound reminding me he was still here, but barely. The doctor had said he was stable. But stable doesn't mean safe. It just means not gone yet. I rubbed my eyes and checked the time. 6:42 a.m. Too early for normal life, but not too early for answers. Because one question kept circling in my head. Where did that $950 come from? I pulled out my phone, opened my email, searched HOA, Nothing recent. I checked spam, promotions, archive folders. Still nothing. No notices, no warnings. I muttered. That didn't make sense. Even the most aggressive HOAs send multiple alerts before escalating. Emails, letters, late fees, final notices, threats. But this came out of nowhere, which meant one of two things. Either I missed everything, or it was never sent. I stood up quietly and stepped into the hallway. Dialed the number listed on the HOA website. It rang twice. Ridgemorn Community Management. A woman answered. Her voice was smooth, professional, almost too polished. Yeah, I said. This is Marcus Reed. I need a full breakdown of my account. Immediately. A pause. Keyboard typing in the background. Yes, Mr. Reed, she said. I see your account here. Outstanding balance, $950. I want details, I said. Every charge, every date. Of course. More typing. Monthly dues, $300, she said. 3 months unpaid. Late fees applied. Stop, I said. I paid everything through autopay. Another pause. Longer this time. I don't see any recent payments, she replied. That's when I knew. Something was wrong. Check again, I said. Slower now, because I have bank records that say otherwise. Her tone shifted slightly. Less confident. Can you provide confirmation numbers? She asked. Yeah, I said. I can, but before I do, tell me something. Silence. Where were the notices? I asked. Emails, letters, warnings. Another pause. I'm not seeing any outgoing notifications logged, she said carefully. There it was. So you're telling me, I said, my voice tightening, you charge me late fees, restricted access, and never sent a single notice. I would need to escalate this to management, she said quickly. Do that, I replied, and I want copies of everything on my account sent to me today. I hung up and just stood there, because now it wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was real. The debt didn't just feel wrong. It was wrong. An hour later, Officer Daniel showed up at the hospital, coffee in hand. Same calm expression. But there was something different now. More focused. Morning, he said. Did you talk to her? I asked immediately. He nodded. I did. And he took a sip of coffee. She claims the enforcement was justified, he said. Says your account was flagged as non-compliant. I let out a short laugh. Of course she did. But here's the thing, he continued. That tone again, the one that means something's about to shift. We pulled preliminary HOA records. I leaned forward, and there's a discrepancy, he said. My stomach tightened. What kind of discrepancy? He flipped open a folder. Your account shows 3 months of missed payments, he said. But the timestamps for those entries, they were all added within the last 48 hours. Silence. I just stared at him. Wait, I said slowly. You're saying those charges weren't recorded when they actually happened? He shook his head. They were entered recently, he said, all at once. A cold wave ran through me. So she, what? Just decided I owed money. We're not jumping to conclusions yet, he said carefully, but the timing raises serious questions. Serious questions. That's one way to put it. Let me guess, I said. She's the one who entered them. He didn't answer directly. Linda Harper has administrative access to the HOA system, he said. She can input, modify, and enforce account balances. There it was. Power. Unchecked. Did you find anything else? I asked. He hesitated. Yes. That word landed heavy. What? He flipped to another page. You're not the only one. I froze. What do you mean? We've identified at least 4 other residents who were marked delinquent within the same time frame, he said, or within the last 2 days. My chest tightened. And let me guess, I said, they didn't get notices either. He shook his head. No record of notifications for any of them. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a system glitch. This was a pattern. Why? I asked. What's the point of doing that? He closed the folder slowly. That's what we're trying to figure out. But I already had a feeling. Because people like Linda, they don't do things without a reason. And it's usually about one thing. Control. Later that afternoon, I got the email from the HOA office. Full account statement. Every charge. Every entry. I opened it immediately. And there it was. 3 charges. All dated within the last 2 days. Late fees applied instantly. No prior balance. No missed payments before that. Just created. Like someone needed it to exist. My hands clenched. Because now I wasn't just angry. I was certain. This wasn't about collecting dues. This was about creating a reason. A reason to enforce. A reason to punish. A reason to control access. And yesterday, that control almost cost my father his life. I looked over at him, still in the hospital bed, still fighting, and something inside me locked into place. This wasn't over, not even close, because if she did this to me, how many others were there? By the next morning, the story wasn't just mine anymore. It had started spreading, quietly at first, then faster than anyone expected, because in neighborhoods like this, people talk, and when they do, they don't hold back. I was still at the hospital when Officer Daniels called again. His voice was different this time. More serious. Less procedural. "We've got a problem," he said. I already knew I wasn't going to like what came next. What kind of problem? I asked. A pause. Paper shuffling in the background. Then, "We've identified multiple similar complaints," he said. "Same HOA. Same president." My grip tightened around my phone. "Define similar," I said. Another pause. "Residents being marked delinquent without prior notice," he replied. "Access restrictions being applied immediately. Late fees appearing retroactively." I closed my eyes for a second. So it wasn't just me. How many? I asked. "Right now," he said. 4 confirmed. Possibly more. 4. That number shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. Because now it wasn't a mistake. It was a system. And systems don't break randomly. They are built that way. Later that day, I was called into a small conference room in the hospital by Officer Daniels. A second officer was already there, along with a folder on the table. Thicker than I expected. "This is what we've gathered so far," Daniels said. He opened the folder. The first page showed my account. Then another, and another. Then 4 more. Different names. Different houses. Same HOA. Same pattern. "All of these residents," he said, pointing at the pages, "were flagged as delinquent within a 48-hour window." I leaned forward. "This is coordinated," I said. He didn't disagree. "It looks that way," he said carefully. I flipped through the pages. Every account showed the same thing. Charges appearing suddenly. No prior balance history. No documented notices. "This doesn't happen by accident,"